Mallory Mackey. Beautiful. Oh, my goodness. I remember the first time I heard that song on Van Morrison's CD, Avalon Sunset. I think I was 10, but it was long time. It was like a lifetime ago, if you know what I mean. But anyway, a lifetime ago, and the first time I heard those words sung, it brought me back to my ancient soul. It brought me back to the place within myself, the place within all of us that asks the question, when will I learn to live in God? You see, we have such a deep, deep longing inside to truly live in God, and even that little bit of distance, that movement away, and we know what it feels like, don't we, when we are not living in God? I call it a kind of a heaviness, kind of a shadowy feeling. And I know when my thoughts are not of God. I know when my emotions and my feelings, I know when I'm having judgments or fears. And clearly, in any of those states of mind, I am not living in God. And so there is a call from the soul that comes up. And it sounds just like Val. And it sings, when will I ever learn to live in God? Like, learn now, Myra, learn now. And what a sweet call that is of the soul. What a sweet, sweet call. And so that's what we're about today. We're about moving into this new year, living in God more fully. You know, it was funny. Yesterday we had our monthly chaplain meeting, and it's really quite an ordeal because when you have 20 chaplains who like to talk, it takes 3 hours. It really does, and we love it. We love it. So whenever the chaplains meet, we always do a brief check-in, which takes most of the time, and then we answer a question. And the question that I asked the chaplains to think about was, what spiritual intention do you hold for yourself now and in the few months to come? What is it that you see yourself moving into, breathing into spiritually? And as you speak your intention, know that all of us here will support you in reaching that and creating a reality of that which your soul desires. What was so amazing, and perhaps not at all amazing, was that most of us said we had a deep longing to live in God more fully. We had a desire to live in God in those moments when we felt distance or we felt removed. We have a desire to live in God even in those short little jaunts we take. You know, you know what I mean by a little jaunt? When your mind goes off on a tangent and it goes and you're in a whole different cosmos for about an hour and you've figured out the world and you've analyzed everybody in that world, and then you come back and think, wow, what just happened? That kind of thing. All of us have a desire to live in God more fully. It's our spiritual nature. It's who we are. And so when I think about how that is, I think about what it is I need to assist me to stay there and live there more fully. And one of the greatest tools that I know is this little book, Lessons in Truth. This book is by Emily Cady, and as our wonderful platformers mentioned earlier, it is a book that we will be starting some classes on, starting tomorrow night, starting Monday night for 5 weeks, and we'll have 5 Sundays taking lessons in truth. But before I tell you a little bit more about the book itself, I want to tell you about this most remarkable woman, Emily Cady. That's a very enchanting picture of her. Um, she's quite the looker, and let me just say this. She was born in 1840. I know. Mm. And actually, that's one of the better pictures, one of the younger pictures of her. But I'll tell you, she is a dear, dear, dear soul. She was born in 1848. And she lived at a remarkable time in our spiritual history in this country. She lived at a time when New Thought was just really developing as a movement. Unity is a part of the New Thought movement. And when Emily Cady was growing up, she was in the midst of a lot of the people that changed the New Thought movement and created it. Her peers were none other than Ernest Holmes, who created religious science. Also Emmett Fox, who created divine science. And she studied with Emma Curtis Hopkins, who was a wonderful teacher of Mary Baker Eddy, who began Christian Science. And so she was surrounded in this new thought of Christianity, and that's where the name came from. It was a new way to practice Christianity that was based on a practical knowledge. The theology honored the teachings of Jesus, and the practice of honoring the teachings of Jesus were different. They said that we as individuals all carry divinity in us, the 5 principles, and that we were called to live that truth through our thoughts and through prayer and meditation. And so Emily Cady was right in the heart of that, and she was really moved by it, as well as the poetry of Emerson. And so she began writing, and she became quite well known as a teacher through her writings. And it was in the late 1800s that Myrtle Fillmore, one of our co-founders, found a little pamphlet that she had written that talked about living from the Christ. And Myrtle was so taken with this pamphlet that she immediately did what every wife does. She showed her husband. And so she gave it to Charles, who then wrote to Emily and said, "Could I reprint this article? It is fabulous. And by the way, while you're at it, would you be willing to write articles for Unity magazine?" She agreed. And in fact, the articles she wrote for Unity magazine is what has become Lessons in Truth. These are all articles that were printed back in 1896. They started then, and they were printed, and then the Fillmores decided to put it together to compile it into a book that we now have. Lessons in Truth is one of the greatest foundational books in New Thought teachings that you will ever find. And even though the writings are 150 years old, they are passionate, they are profound, they are real, and they are highly inspirational. And so it is such a joy to share this beautiful work with you. And in fact, I want to start with her first part in the first chapter, called Bondage or Liberty, which, she says, "In entering upon this course of instruction, each of you should, so far as possible, lay aside for the time being all previous theories and beliefs. By doing so, you will be saved the trouble of trying all the way through the course to put new wine into old wineskins." I love that. She's telling the new student of New Thought teachings, and she's telling us, those of us that have taught this book and read this book maybe 10 times. And sometimes it might feel like it is a remedial class. Because I'm still learning new things. But I take her words to heart when she said, open your mind, essentially. Don't carry old thoughts. Don't carry old ideas into these teachings. Start fresh. And it's a powerful thing to say because wherever we are, we can fall into that thinking that goes, I know that, And that understanding stays here, right? It stays here and we get it here and we don't integrate it. So she's saying, don't take these teachings and put them into your old thinking because we like to do that. And why do we like that? Because we like being comfortable. We like having thoughts that we find are very agreeable, and we don't like to be agitated to grow in truth, to break up our old thinking into a new way of being because it requires us to change. She says that we need to open our mind and bring new thoughts into a new mind, the Christ mind, if you will, to have a new way of being. And so when she talks about wineskins, she's really talking about the Gospel of Luke. And in the Gospel of Luke, we read, "No one pours new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine will burst the skins. The wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. New wine must be stored in new wineskins." When I joined the board for Unity Worldwide Ministries, we all received a new wineskin. And we were told at the time to leave behind our old agendas, our old ways of thinking, our old ideas of how things should be. And we were told that as we take the pledge to become new board members, we were called to bring forward new thoughts that were God-inspired now, today. And we were called to leave behind our old conditioning, our old comfort levels, to open our minds to really be receptive to the power and the direction of Spirit today. It was a great, great message and a great charge to hold. And I believe that is exactly what Emily Cady's talking about. She's saying that as we grow and as we change, no matter where we are, what matters is where we are today. And we are called to open our books in a new way with new eyes and to hear the truth she teaches today. And can you see how that will apply in your life if you are open and receptive? You will hear things that you've heard 100 times but didn't hear in this way. You will start to know things that you couldn't possibly have known a year ago. So that's what we're called to do. And back at the time when Emily Cady was doing this, it was such a fascinating, powerful time because she was saying that we as individuals are not sinners. She said, we were heirs to the kingdom of God, spiritual heirs, and that all that God is lives within us and that we can draw it out if we choose. And so we go back to her question, bondage or liberty? Which? Bondage or liberty?